Hey, it's me, and I am still here, stuck on the first line of Verashito Genesis, because there is so much to unpack, I just can't get past it. So I wanted to focus this video on this word here, et. But first, if we're just looking at it in context, I also want to touch very briefly on this word here, bara, which has been translated as created. Just a fun little thing I noticed, that if we want to break down this word for create or creation or created, it's pretty interesting. We've got the bait symbol, which when it's at the beginning of a word usually means, as I've described it, was the image of a tent, but it just usually means in. So it can, be put in front of all kinds of places, place names, etc. If somebody's going inside of a place, or so it means in. Resh, as we know, was the image of a person's head looking up. So we've got in the head, and this aleph symbol, which I've discussed, is like God the Father symbol. Used to be the image of an ox head. I'm going to talk heaps more about that in this video and maybe subsequent videos, because it's really significant. But if we're just taking this at complete face value of the pictures, we've got in the head of God the Father. So the famous term, that which comes forth from the mouth of God, basically, not the mouth, the head of God constitutes all of creation. So created. In the head of God. Whatever God thinks, that's what happens. So moving past that fun little word. So we've got Bereshit, which we've broken down in a couple of other videos. In beginning, created. Elohim, which we all know is the term for God, or it's a plural term, so that's another interesting video waiting to happen. Just God in the plural. In the beginning created God, et, Hashemayim, the heavens, et, and haaretz, the earth. So this et word, as I think I previously mentioned, doesn't have an English equivalent. It is usually found between a verb or an action. So there's the verb, God doing something, the verb, and the definite object that is being acted upon. That's how it's most commonly used. Can also be placed before personal pronouns or incorporated into personal pronouns, but that might get a little bit too complicated. So we'll just talk about it in the context of it being placed between a verb and a direct object. Now, sometimes I've heard people define this word as being like the definite article, like the, because it's usually before an object that is a definite object, so it has the something. So, created God the heavens and the earth. But it's actually this hey letter here, this little hey in front of Shemaim. That actually that's the definite article. That turns Shemaim, heavens, into the heavens. So this et isn't actually the definite article. It just precedes a definite article. It's attached to a definite article. But more importantly is between a verb and a definite article. So the thing, the action, and the thing which is being acted upon. So I like to think of this as the one, the thing that is acting and the thing that is being acted upon. Now, we've heard that line in scripture before, to act and not to be acted upon. So this is the active element. This is the passive element. In Eastern terminology, we might say this was the yang, the active element, and the yin, the passive receptive element. So when we think of it in those terms, the yang and the yin, this et becomes super interesting. Super interesting. When we look at the two letters that comprise et, we've got the aleph and the tav. Aleph, tav. We already talked about that. Aleph, the beginning letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and tav, the final letter of the Hebrew alphabet, the beginning and the end. So here we have a picture of the dual aspects of the totality, if you like, of God. Later in scripture we hear that I am, which is God, the beginning and the end. So here we have those two aspects of God side by side in the form of a word, et. And this aleph could be called the yang, or the active masculine father end of the spectrum, which would make this, the tav, the passive feminine end of the spectrum of the God totality. So this is kind of, maybe some people listening to this might be thinking I'm skating on thin ice when I start bringing up feminine aspect of God. Now, of course, if I was talking to a bunch of Buddhists, this would not be an issue. But most people who read the Bible and love the Bible, usually from Jewish or the Christian faith, read the Torah, the Old Testament, which is, worship of the masculine God is, that's the only sort of God aspect that's sort of held up, I guess, as being the God that we worship. And no, it's not a lot of talk about the feminine aspect of God and how that even comes into the picture. So that's why I think that this word is so exciting, because this word represents that dualistic nature of God with both the masculine and the feminine, the active and the passive elements side by side. And it has no English equivalent. And it always sits between an action, something which is acting, and something which is receiving, the passive. So I think this word is definitely worth a lot more exploring. I think this video is probably long enough for now, so I might just leave that kind of hanging and maybe make another video about this. Yeah, just flowing on from what I've said. So hopefully that's just whet your taste buds about, the dualistic nature of the totality of God, and how that is actually has its place in scripture, silently, quietly, unobtrusively there, declaring truth. There's actually over 7,000 incidents of this word in the Old Testament. So it's kind of a big deal. It kind of, is in all things and through all things, silently there. Et. I give you et.